Welcome in for another episode of the Silver and Blue Podcast. I'm your host, Nate Sanchez. Joining me, as always, is my co-host, Corey Douglas. Corey, we got another victory Monday. The Cowboys are 5-2. Dak Prescott is back, and life is good. There's a lot to talk about from Sunday. How are we feeling?
Yeah, I think yesterday was a positive step. I know some of the offensive execution and some of that stuff. There's some kinks to be worked out there, but overall, we got another win against a team that we should have beat, and we handled business. I mean, an 18-point win in the NFL is definitely something you can be excited about.
Yeah, absolutely. And there was it was a shaky start, and I kind of figured this would be. I'm pretty sure I said it on our Thursday preview show where I basically said, this feels like a game with Dak coming back. You're going to get some rust from the offense, maybe a slow start, and then Dallas kind of pulls away. I forget what score I said, but it was something to the effect of 30-13 or something like that. Where just Dallas kind of pulls away at the end. Detroit gives them a game, makes them work for it, but because this was a 10-6 game heading into the fourth quarter, and Detroit was heading in to try and take the lead. Things were
Michael
real
Parsons.
sweaty, and then Micah Parsons happened. So let's get into it. Just in terms of, I guess we got to start with the defense again. The defense was yet again fantastic. It's you just can't complain about anything really that the defense did. I mean, I guess if you want to nitpick, you can complain about some more issues in the run game, but that seems to be a trend. That's just how they are. They're not going to be outstanding against the run, but looking at Detroit's offensive numbers, just 18 first downs. They were 3 of 9 on third down, 312 yards, 5.6 yards per play. The Cowboys sacked the Lions sacked Jared Goff 5 times coming into Sunday. Jared Goff had only been sacked 7 times all season, and Dallas sacked him 5 times yesterday. So yeah, Dallas was able to take the ball away 5 times, which I read in a column today from Bob Sturm of The Athletic that that's the most takeaways in a single game by a Cowboys defense in 9 years since a 2013 game against the Giants. But yeah, they shut down the Lions. They got a couple first half field goals, and they shut them out. So let's start with the defense and then go from there. I know everyone wants to talk about and hear about Dak Prescott's return, but yesterday was about the defense, man. They were unbelievable again.
Yeah, they continue to do what they've been doing throughout this entire stretch, during the Cooper Rush stretch, I guess you can call it, those 5 games. The defense kind of really stepped it up a notch, and this is exactly what they did yesterday. And one thing that was interesting to me was that it didn't feel like the pass rush was great, but they still had 5 sacks, and it was some unknown, some not unknown guys, but some guys that really unproven guys, I guess you could say, with Sam Williams getting 2 sacks. Dorrance Armstrong adds another one in there, and then of course you get the Micah Parsons strip sack at the end. But it just felt like it was a more quiet game on the pass rush, and then they still end up with 5 sacks, which I think is just a testament to this defense and just the steps that they've taken this year. And then getting the 5 takeaways on top of that. Diggs gets another pick. Although Tony Romo, I thought he was really bad yesterday, but
Yeah,
that's another note. He
that
was
was
really
so
bad yesterday.
clearly a catch by Diggs. I don't know what he was
Yeah,
reaching there. That was very clearly a catch, but that's
yeah, and
neither
then he
here
was
nor
just
there.
kind of going. I heard a lot of people kind of comparing him to like the Troy Aikman hater situation, and I thought there was a little bit of hate coming from Tony Romo last night, but that's besides this point. This defense is nothing to hate on. So, like you say, if you want to nitpick the run defense, at the end of the day, they're not giving up any points. Now you could say, yeah, that Jamal Williams fumble at the goal line, that probably doesn't happen probably 8 out of 10 times, if that often. But just like I said, just a great overall performance. And honestly, at the end of the day, once Amon St. Brown went out with Swift being out, this was a game that the Cowboys, I mean, I think they did what they were supposed to do.
Yeah, they did what they've done all year. And yeah, you're right. It didn't feel like a massive pass rushing performance, even though they had 5 sacks, because they didn't really generate a whole lot of pressures. They only generated 11 pressures yesterday, and 5 of them were sacks.
That's efficient work.
That's efficient for sure. Sam Williams was the Cowboys' highest graded pass rusher. He has really
He
come on
was
strong
great. He was
as the
great.
season has come as the season has gone. You're really seeing him start to develop. And I was texting our friend of the pod that we had on over the summer, Randall Joyner. I shot him a text yesterday and I said, "Your boy Sam's going crazy," and he was like, "Man, he's special." And yeah, he's been handling business. It's been fun to see him develop as the season's gone on. But yeah, Sam Williams was their highest graded defender yesterday and highest graded pass rusher. Sam Williams was pretty efficient yesterday as well. He just had 8 pass rush snaps and had 2 sacks on those 8 pass rush snaps. So that's efficient. Right behind him, in terms of sacks and pass rush grade, was Micah Parsons with a grade of 91.2. Micah with 5 of the 11 pressures. I do want to talk about that sequence that you briefly mentioned earlier, where they run that tight end screen, and Micah, I mean, it's his closing speed is unbelievable, and you've seen it a
Got up
couple
to 21
times.
miles per hour.
I mean, that is unbelievable, and I would love to know what his real 40 time is, because they just did it at a pro day. I would love to know what his combine 40 time is, because
And this is with pads on. Like
yeah,
that.
he was flying, and he ends up, this is championship effort that you love to see from your 2 leaders on your defense, where Micah Parsons runs down and saves a touchdown, which, by the way, I don't know how Dan Campbell didn't challenge that, because I thought
Brutal.
there was a chance that it wasn't Hawkinson. It was one of their backups. I forget his name, but I don't know how Dan Campbell didn't challenge that, because it looked like he might have scored, but they didn't. Detroit went up and they ran a play from the 1 foot line, wasn't even a yard, that Micah ran him down at. And, they run they run, I believe it was a tight end pulling to the right side, and DeMarcus Lawrence splits a double team, blows the pulling tight end. It was either a tight end or a guard. I don't remember. I think it was a tight end. Blows the tight end off of his track, and then hits Jamal Williams and pops the ball loose. And that was an unbelievable play from DeMarcus Lawrence. And I know we've talked extensively about Micah, and rightfully so, but I think I've said on the show previously in the last couple weeks, this is the best football DeMarcus Lawrence has played in his whole career. He's been fantastic, and I think having Micah along this defensive line with him has helped immensely.
Yeah, and just to go kind of how rare that fumble was for Jamal Williams, he had not fumbled in his 6-year
Mm-hmm.
career. And for it to come at that situation is just unbelievable. But it goes to speak to the talent and the effort and just the season that DeMarcus Lawrence is having. So that's definitely huge. And I also want to go back to Sam Williams real quick, because one thing about his game that I really, really love is just the nastiness he plays with. I mean, he slammed a dude earlier in the game, which probably should have been a flag,
I was
but it
stunned they
wasn't
didn't throw a
called.
flag for
Yeah, I
that.
was I was shocked. But that's the type of thing, like, because it didn't result in a flag, I love it, you know?
Yeah,
And this is kind of the attitude and some of the things that, Stephen Jones and some of the guys around the team that, kind of live at the Star and covered the team at the Star have been talking about, is like they were going for this nastiness and just a certain type of force that you come with, because when San Francisco jumps off the bus or comes off the bus in your stadium, you already know what type of game that is. And I think the Cowboys are going to kind of emulate that in their own little way. And I thought that was really important. And I love what Sam Williams brings to the team. So I definitely wanted to shout that out.
yeah, he deserves a lot of props, because in my defensive review, not last week but the week prior, I discussed his he's definitely getting an uptick in snaps as the season has gone on, and I charted his grades from PFF, his pressures, his number of snaps, and all of them are going up each week. And I think this week they were a little down, but his production was still up. And so either way, like
Exactly.
there's a very clear trend going on with Sam Williams right now that's really nice to see. And honestly, I know they're not totally, they're not the same player, but he does remind me some of like a young Randy Gregory, which, if he could turn into that type of player within the next year or two, I don't think he'll get there quite this year, but I mean, man, there's a lot to like about Sam Williams, and you're starting to see some of the tools that they really loved coming out of Ole Miss. I mean, the athleticism, the burst that he has off the edge. It's really exciting to see.
And I think part of that is just going back to, giving credit to obviously the work that he's putting in, but Dan Quinn finding that situations where, he can put him in the game to where he can be successful. I mean, you mentioned his numbers, how efficient he was. That is a large part into the positions he's been put in. So I think that has a lot to do with it, and obviously his overall talent. I mean, he's not a second round pick just based off of talent. It's some, off the field maturity, different question marks ahead coming into the year or the draft process. But I mean, he's definitely coming into his own, and I think by the end of the year, like you said, it's probably not going to be Randy Gregory type production, but towards the end of the year, I think he's going to even be getting better and better. And then next year, I think
Mhm.
we will really have something.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And yeah, he's in this current situation where he's being asked to just be a situational pass rusher. This is perfect for his development. So
Absolutely.
he absolutely deserves some props. And the whole defense is just, the defensive front just continues to be ferocious and just absolutely wrecking games. It's really it's fun to watch. And unfortunately, though, the defense did take a little bit of a hit yesterday because the Cowboys' third highest graded defender from yesterday with a grade of 88.9. Jordan Lewis went down with Liz Frank foot injury, which is the same injury that James Washington suffered in camp. And he had surgery last night, and he is unfortunately out for the season. Um, and his last play, which
It
might be
was a
his last
pick.
play, might be his last play as a Cowboy, because I believe they can save some money by cutting him, making him a cap casualty this year. Was a pick, and it was a really impressive play. It's just really unfortunate, and that's definitely something I wanted to touch on before we talk about the rest of the secondary, because it's an injury to monitor. One of the things about the defense that we discussed before the season was our concerns about the lack of depth at the corner position. And we're gonna find out about it pretty quickly. There's not much that you love behind, like if Trevon Diggs were to go down, God forbid, or even Anthony Brown. And people like to hate on Anthony Brown. He's a very important part of this defense. Jordan Lewis had become a pretty nice slot corner for Dallas, and behind him, you have, I believe, a fourth, maybe fifth. I think he was a fourth round pick rookie, Deron Bland, who showed a lot in the preseason. And you have Kelvin Joseph, the second round pick, who hasn't played much in the ways of cornerback this year. He's been primarily a special teamer, then Nashon Wright. So, you know, Anthony Brown has played the slot in the past. Maybe they move Anthony Brown inside some and move Kelvin Joseph outside. I would guess that they give Deron Bland the first shot at slot corner, and then we see where things go from there. He was primarily the slot corner after Lewis got hurt, but that's definitely something to monitor because that Jordan Lewis. It's not like Micah Parsons went down or something. Let's be clear, but Jordan Lewis was a decently key piece to this defense, and we'll just have to see how the secondary responds without him for the rest of the year.
Yeah, and luckily, they have the Bears next on the schedule. Obviously, it's the rest of the season injury, but to kind of work out the kinks of what they're going to do and kind of see what stuff looks like, you get the Bears offense, who is not really going to stress your defense as far as passing the ball goes, and then Green Bay and the mess that they're at after the bye week. So unfortunate, definitely. Hope he has a speedy recovery and can get back to the level he was playing at. And I'm actually blocked by Jordan Lewis on Twitter, so I couldn't tweet him that. So, but no, I definitely feel for him. And like you said, it could be his last snap as a Cowboy. And, if it is, what a way to go out.
Yeah, for sure. Deron Bland is probably going to be the guy that they're going to ask to step up. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, he was their highest graded defensive back yesterday, highest coverage grade. He was outstanding yesterday, and it really sucks to see him go down for the year. But looking at the rest of the secondary, before we get into the positive stuff, because one more thing I did want to point out, because there's a lot of really good stuff, especially by Mr. Diggs. Jaron Curse had a really tough day, and he hasn't quite been the same, um, this season, and maybe since the knee injury. He was kind of a tight end stopper for Dallas last year, and he was really, really good at it.
We were
This year,
excited to get him back.
yeah, and he's still a key part of this defense, but maybe he's still a little banged up. Maybe he's not healthy. Maybe he could really use this bye week. But yesterday, looking at his coverage stats, he was targeted 6 times in coverage, gave up 6 catches for 73 yards. He was behind his receiver multiple times yesterday. That was
Yep.
he's someone to monitor for sure. And with Izzy Mukwamu playing well whenever he was out, I'm not saying they're going to bench Curse or anything, but Curse needs to be better. And I think part of it might have to do with the injury that he was dealing with. But He stuck out to me as a negative in the secondary yesterday because the Lions tight ends were running free a lot yesterday, and they leaned on him heavily without DJ Chark and Amon-Ra St. Brown. So
Yeah, that was definitely unfortunate, especially when you consider that, Hawkinson was pretty much their only threat out there in the passing game. Now, of course, they didn't have a whole lot of success overall as far as scoring points and moving the ball that consistently outside of running the football, but that definitely you saw 27 trailing a lot of those crossing routes,
yep,
which are definitely hard to guard. And I think that's kind of the way where I've heard a lot of people talking about like crossing routes is kind of where teams are being successful. Like the successful offenses are going to some of those crossing routes. So if you can't stop that, you might have a hard time when the important games start coming up.
yeah, absolutely. And so curses issues are definitely something to think about for sure. Um, But yeah, before we move on to the offense, Trevon Diggs deserves a shout out as well. He was targeted 3 times in coverage yesterday. He was their second highest graded player in coverage. Must have killed PFF to give Trevon Diggs a decent grade in coverage, but he was targeted 3 times, gave up 1 catch for 6 yards, and one of those 3 targets he intercepted, which was, you know, it wasn't exactly blanket coverage. It was a pretty underthrown ball from Jared Goff. By the way,
Terrible throw.
it was a really impressive catch because he had to stop, turn his body, reach all the way out, and made a really impressive catch. I believe that is his 17th interception in 35 games. 30, I
Yep,
might have that
that's
number
it.
wrong, but I saw
That's
that on
it.
Twitter today. I mean, he's been outstanding. And as he was a first team All Pro last year, he's been even better this year. His interception numbers might not be as crazy this year, but I would absolutely take this version of Trevon Diggs over the 2021 version of him.
And I thought the third down play that he made when Detroit was kind of deep in
Yep.
Cowboys
Yep.
territory was a great play. So
Yeah.
he's playing outstanding football. I mean, he's not giving up much in the way of anything right now. And he still
Yeah.
has what, 3 interceptions on the year so far? Like three?
I think that was number 3. I want to say might have been
Yeah.
4.
So
Maybe it was 4. I don't remember, but yeah, targeted 3 times yesterday. 1 catch for 6 yards, 1 PBU, and 1 INT. Hard to complain about Trevon Diggs, man. He was rock solid yesterday. But let's get into the offense. Spend a little time on that. Uh, Dak Prescott was back, and the first half was a little shaky. There was definitely some struggles, from the whole unit, but individually, I thought Dak looked really good. He made some really good throws early. He was on target most of the day. I mean, he had a couple throws that he probably would like to have back, but I mean, generally, Dak was rock solid yesterday, and he looked miles better than he looked in week one. Um, Looking at his numbers from yesterday, his raw stats, he was 19 of 25 for I believe 207 and a touchdown. But he finished his advanced stats 11.9 total EPA. That's great. 76% completion, and I believe he had a CPOE completion percentage over expected of 10, and he had a 78 quarterback rating. I mean, he made a couple really nice throws, but it looked like they were just knocking some rust off, and I thought he looked the least rusty of the whole offense, frankly, because there was some issues in the rest of the unit, in my opinion.
yeah, so I'll just talk about Dak just real quick. I thought for the most part, like you said, he looked pretty good, all things considered. You mentioned the two decisions that he made where he just said that he was feeling so good with his thumb that he thought he could fit the ball in there, and he'll kind of rein that in as the time goes on, which I would expect because Dak historically has been a good decision maker and not really putting the ball in harm's way a whole lot. And then the second half, I thought he was fantastic. I thought it was way cleaner. He made one great throw. I believe this was in the second half. The one to CD Lamb where
Hmm.
CD Lamb went up and made a great contested catch. But overall, like I mean, all things considered, game one back, I thought he played pretty well. Obviously, they're gonna have to clean up some stuff on offense. And I heard a theory. We haven't really talked about this yet, as far as like the third down play calling. But Brian Broaddus came up with this and was like, I think Kellen Moore was kind of just putting some different things on film as far as those toss plays on like third and short to Zeke to kind of give
Hmm.
teams something else to look at. So I think there might be something to that as far as some of that play calling because it didn't really line up because you weren't having success doing it to begin with. and then you just kind of kept beating your head against that wall. So hopefully that's not something that's going to continue. But as far as Dak Prescott, can't complain for his first game back.
One thing we talked about with Cooper Rush was, it was specifically with Kellen Moore and the play calling was the emphasis on play action. And, you and I were calling for, when Dak gets back, don't abandon that. Stick with the play action. Yesterday, Dak Prescott went 11. This was from John Owning. Dak Prescott went 11 of 13 for 121 yards and a touchdown. Went on play action against Detroit, meaning Dak used play action on 50% of his dropbacks. His play action usage has hovered around 25% in previous seasons. If this is an indication that they're going to continue to use play action frequently, that's a very good thing. Dak has always been a really good play action passer. So I'm really excited about that trend. I hope that's something that they stick to. But yeah, Dak looked really sharp. The rest of the offense, not so much.
Not great.
There were some struggles. We're starting to see some of the chinks in the armor of Tyler Smith up front. He gave up. I'm looking at his pass blocking stats right now. He was
I
charged with
think he's
2
like the
pressures.
54th graded offensive tackle in football right now.
Yeah, he's getting there. He's developing. He's been better than we could have expected. But over the last month or so, we're starting to see some of those issues start to pop up, especially in pass protection, as teams are getting more film on him. He struggled with an outside move on Hutchinson. I believe that was the sack he gave up. He's still a really good run blocker, and there's a lot to like there. There's been some positive news about Tyron Smith that they've been putting out about him being able to come back maybe in December. And that you have to wonder if they'll move Tyler Smith in at guard when if Tyron Smith gets back. I'm not exactly counting on it, but Tyler Smith has definitely struggled recently, and he had a tough time with Aiden Hutchinson. He had a really tough time, and I just didn't think this was a great day from the offensive line altogether. I mean, they only gave up 6 pressures, but there were some inefficient points in the run game, and there's just it wasn't great yesterday. I can't put my finger on exactly because the pressures weren't really there, but there's just something there that seemed off yesterday.
Yeah, I just think the overall execution of the plays that they were running, it just wasn't great. And then in situational football, something that you always hear, the team talk about as far as coaching staff, the players, and they just didn't execute on some short yardage situations, an
Mhm.
area where they had been pretty much automatic to this point in the season. So like I said, I don't know if that part of that is just like we're gonna try something else, put it on film. Not saying that they weren't trying to still execute the play that they called, but I think they kind of got away from their kind of bread and butter and what had been successful in those, especially in those short yardage situations. Those just really kind of stand out to me. And then in the run game was, it was decent. I mean, the numbers end up being decent,
Yeah.
but it wasn't clean. Like 83 yards that Pollard got, and then I think Zeke got 57 on 15 carries.
Mhm.
So overall, it just wasn't a clean operation.
Yeah, and just I think that was part of just the timing with Dak coming back and knocking some of that rust off. I thought it wasn't a great day from the receivers either. CeeDee Lamb finished with 4 catches for 70 yards. Noah Brown with 5 for 50, and he had that one drop early in the game. It wasn't a great throw from Dak, but it hit him in the hands literally
Should have been
twice. Like,
yarn.
like, like you need him to catch that. Michael
Gallup had nothing.
Gallup was shut out yesterday. Kellen Moore talked today about wanting to get Gallup going. Dalton Schultz, we had our first Dalton Schultz sighting in a few weeks. He had 5 catches for 49 yards yesterday. And, we were saying his numbers fell off a cliff when Dak was out. And, we figured some of his value would come back whenever Dak comes back healthy. And it certainly did. He looked a lot better and a lot healthier this week. He still had another scare with that knee. And I really think they should apparently he's fine and
Give
he's
him
going
the
to
week
play this
off.
week, but
Yeah, give him the
he,
week off. I
and
mean,
like
heading into a bye,
he could really use just sit him this Bears game, give him that game that week, and then the bye to just get healthy for the stretch run because they're going to need him. But it sounds like he's good and he's going to play this week. But yeah, he had another scare with an awkward tackle where his knee got rolled up on, and those are scary, man. But he definitely showed out yesterday. And his value clearly returns a decent bit whenever Dak's under center for sure. We got our first Peyton Hendershot career touchdown catch in the back of the end zone. Jake
and
Ferguson also had a catch, and
and
it's
that
like that's the thing with
touchdown
Schultz.
could have went to either one of them too,
Yeah, I
Hendershot
mean,
or
there's Dak had
Ferguson.
options there. Dak had options, and that's the thing where I'm like, we could stand to let Schultz just sit a week and rest and get healthy because Hendershot and Ferguson have shown flashes where you feel okay about them for a week while Schultz gets healthy. Because again, they're going to need Schultz down the stretch, especially with Dak healthy and how much Dak seems to like Schultz.
Yeah, I just wonder how much of Schultz trying to tough it out. It just has to do with he probably kind of sees the writing on the wall. He wants to get out there, play these games. But at the end of the day, I think a lot of players in hindsight, past players, the one that comes to mind often is Des Bryant in this type of situation where you're out there, you're trying to play through pain, you're banged up, and the production hasn't been there. Like you said, he had 5 catches, 49 yards, which is solid, but that's not going to get you top of the market tight end
Yeah.
money at the end of the day. So I just wonder how much of that thinking is kind of going into it because he kind of sees the writing on the wall. He sees how well these guys behind him are playing, and he doesn't want to lose, those reps.
Yeah, and the other thing is like about the offensive production yesterday is like it's very underrated that you know, you kind of forget that they only scored these many points. I mean that Noah Brown fumble at near the goal line really hurt. Just in terms of uh, you know, momentum and how they and how they went. But yeah, I mean, and you look at the Cowboys drive charts, there just were some questionable decisions because they started out with a couple 3-and-outs, and then they kick a field goal to make it 3-3, which I thought they should have gone for it. It's 4th and 2, and you were inside, I think, the Detroit 10 maybe, but I
Yeah, I
thought you
thought that
should have
was
gone for it
it was from the
there.
4 yard line.
Yeah, and so they went punt, and then drive with the field goal, then punt, and then the fumble near the goal line, which they would have scored there, either 3 or 7, and
Yeah, that was a crazy tackle too.
it was an unbelievable play. And then in the second half, they come out interception, touchdown, 7 plays, 82 yards, punt, and then 11 plays, 54 yards to salt the game away. And then also, quick shout out as we get on out of here, we had another Cavante Turpin sighting. He's really starting to come on, and feels like every
He's the
week he
best punt
makes a big
returner in the
play.
league right now.
Yeah. Yes. And it feels like every week he makes a really big play that impacts the game, and he flipped the field in a big way. Dallas wasn't able to capitalize on it, unfortunately, with as a sack knocked Dak Prescott and the offense out of field goal range, where I mean he literally beat Terrence Steele in about a half a second. I mean, Dak didn't even have a
No
chance to
chance.
throw the ball away. I mean, it was
No.
so yesterday wasn't the greatest game from Steele, but I thought him and Martin did some good work in the run game. Just generally, there's some stuff with the offense they need to get figured out. They really need to get the third down offense figured out. But yeah, I mean, these couple weeks against the Lions and the Bears, two weaker opponents, are weeks where you figure that stuff out as Dak gets back and acclimated and healthy. And then you go into the bye week, and then we head into the stretch run with a tough 2-game road trip of Green Bay and Minnesota.
Yeah, that's going to be a really good test. I think I saw you tweet today. You think a split is realistic in those 2 games, which I very well think a split definitely could be coming. Just because Green Bay just hasn't figured it out yet, and we'll kind of see a couple of weeks how that's going. But definitely take care of business against Chicago. They're getting ready to play here in about an hour or so against New England. We'll kind of see what their offense looks like. But overall, getting to 6-2 at the bye week when Dak Prescott missed 5 games, you couldn't ask for anything more. And maybe the Eagles will slip up and lose a game at some point this year to where we can put the division talk back into play. But
Yeah.
overall, 5-2 through 7 games. He's still sitting comfortably in a wild card spot overall as a team. So, I mean, there's a lot to improve on, but there's also a lot to be excited about, and then a lot of football left to be played.
Yeah, look, Corey, here's the thing. If I would have told you before the season, everyone healthy, no injuries, even Tyron Smith's healthy, if I would have told you you're 5-2 out of the gate, you sign up for
Take
that
it.
10 times out of 10. And then you factor in the fact that Dak Prescott missed 5 games, and yeah. And, even if disaster struck and they lose as 10-point home favorites to the lowly Bears, which, it's the NFL, you know, any given Sunday, stuff happens. It could happen. you still would have signed right up for 5-3, especially with the Dak injury. So, I mean, worst case 5-3 heading into the bye, probably going to be 6-2 if they take care of business on Sunday. There's a lot to like, and there with how weird the NFC's been with Green Bay and Tampa Bay and the Rams all struggling and San Francisco struggling. Dallas looks like one of the best teams in the NFC, and I'm really not sure how big the gap is between them and Philadelphia when Dak's healthy. So there's a lot to be excited about, a lot to like. You have an absolutely elite defense, and you have an offense that's finding their footing, which I think is going to take some time with Dak. And he hasn't played a lot with this unit really. I mean, it's a pretty new unit and a redesigned unit on a lot of levels.
Yeah, and I think one point to make in that situation is that when you look at the opponents that the Cowboys have played in the first half, I mean, you talk about the Bucks, the Bengals, the Eagles on the road, the Rams on the road. Like those four were considered tough games, and they went 2-2 and lost two of the games without Dak Prescott. So I think all things considered, you can't
Mhm.
complain right now.
Hard to complain. And again, I enjoyed another Victory Monday. I'm sure you did too. So as we get on out of here, make sure to check out everything we're doing at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. Check me out on Twitter at Nate_Sanch77. Check Corey out at the Mr. Douglas, and check out everything we've got going on at the Dallas Sports Fanatic. I'll have my offensive and defensive reviews up soon. Thank you guys for listening. We will talk to you next time on the Silver and Blue podcast.